Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Evolving Activist. And today I want to talk about gurus, leaders, uh, thought leaders sometimes. Um, I've been looking at a lot of stuff that's been going on in various movements in the wellness community, the spiritual community, the activist community. And I've noticed something happening through the pandemic, through the political unrest and upheavals, through this very, very challenging year. I've noticed rifts happening, and you've seen this too, rifts happening in the communities that we're in, not just along political lines, but along ideological lines as well. We've seen people's beliefs take them down paths that may be shocking to us, that we may not understand, that we may not be able to identify with. And I noticed that when this happens with a leader in a movement, it has a huge effect. Huge. When somebody that people have looked up to as a leader, who have looked to for guidance, who have been held up as a font of wisdom, of perspective, of truth, when they spin off down a rabbit hole, that can be really destabilizing. Really destabilizing. I've seen in the spiritual community a lot of people, high profile people in the spiritual community, diametrically opposed. Some are going down very dangerous paths and leading their followers down those paths with them. Some are taking what they call the high road and calling out the other leaders on their hypocrisy or their bad judgment or their terrible ideology or whatever it is, right? I've seen a lot of judgment on both sides. How can you believe that? You're so stupid. That's ridiculous. All of that sort of stuff. From people who purportedly should know better. From people who claim to have done their work, to be spiritually enlightened, to have found a path. And that always leaves a really bad taste in my mouth. When leaders in a movement start to call out the log in somebody else's eye, or what is it, the splinter in somebody else's eye before seeing the log in their own. I think I see people on the street. I see every day seekers and activists destabilized. I see them questioning. I see them feeling betrayed. I see them thinking, well, if I can't count on this person, who can I count on? And I continue to see these high profile names in the industry putting themselves out there, leading with ego, frankly, and talking about how unenlightened the other side is, the people who have diverged from the path that they've chosen. And that makes me sad. I feel really sad when I see that. I feel really sad when I observe the grief of people in these movements and in these communities, when they realize that somebody that they looked up to has taken a disturbing turn, a turn that no longer aligns with the path that they were previously promoting, or that aligns with how this person feels is the truth. I see a lot of grief. I see a lot of betrayal. I see torn loyalties. And that's a lot of angst for people who are already dealing with a pandemic. That's a lot of angst for people who are already trying to make positive change in the world, who are already tired from fighting for justice and equity. And if you're one of those people who's feeling that angst and that grief and that betrayal, if you're looking at other people and saying, oh, how unenlightened, if you're feeling that judgment, I know I do, I get there, right? I often judge people who are believing differently from me. And that's a path that I'm working on. Um, how do I find a path for me that allows space for somebody else's ideology and also holds true to the values that I have of doing no harm, of ahimsa, right? Of of kindness and compassion and justice and equity. I feel that tension and that polarity. And I'm not saying I have an answer to it. I'm not saying that I've transcended judgment or or that I've found the truth. And I'm seeing a lot of people in various communities and movements say that they have. And I don't believe them. I see them contributing to division, tearing each other down. I mean, in the spiritual community, for heaven's sake, people tearing each other down, judging each other for not choosing to believe what they believe, calling each other out. Oh, you're part of the problem. And in the meantime, millions of followers are going, what the hell's going on? Who do I follow? Who do I believe? I thought you were somebody I could trust. Ah, my heart breaks. My heart is breaking. People in the spiritual community, people in the activist communities. What are we working for? If we boil it down, what I hear most of these communities, the wellness community, the spiritual community, the activist community, social justice, that we're all wanting to build a kinder, more compassionate, more equitable and just world. And here we are having the foundations pulled out from underneath us, having the prescribed paths that were laid out for us questioned and judged, and oh my goodness, so much shame, so much shame. Oh, it's crazy making, and not in a good way, right? It's destabilizing. It's it's heartbreaking, frankly. And I just think of, where do I want to be in the world? What kind of world do I want to build? And I'll share where I'm coming to. I'm coming to, if I have to hang my beliefs on the teachings of somebody else and on their ideology, for me, that's also a form of bypassing. If you're not familiar with the term spiritual bypass or bypassing, is trying to get to the endpoint, trying to get to the enlightenment, right? Without doing the work in between. It's disassociating from our human condition and the trials and tribulations and struggles. It's trying to avoid the pain and attain the bliss without integrating the whole. And as a gestaltist, that is not where I come from. I come from a place that is working to integrate the whole. And for me to look at all this division and all of this fragmentation and everybody striving for nirvana without really looking at their shadow, without doing their work, trying to appropriate somebody else's ideology, essentially, right? This is what veganism is. It is this, right? This is the absolute truth, right? This is what spirituality is, right? If you prescribe any other path, no matter if it may be useful to somebody, no matter if it helps move that person along on theirs, no, it doesn't align with what I believe, so therefore it's wrong. What if we could show, what if we could hold the both and? What if we could hold the paradox, right? That yes, there may be parts of what this person teaches that are deeply useful to me, that do move me along my path, that help me to heal, that help me to find a way that I can become a better person, that I can bring forth this vision that I have of a kind of more compassionate, more just, and more equitable world. If I can take a piece from you and a piece from you, right? Is that a bad thing, or do I have to follow you wholesale? I reject that personally. You make your own choices. But I believe that if I have to hang my beliefs and my ideology on the teaching of somebody else based on their beliefs and their ideology, I have not done my work. And that can be a form of bypassing. That's me trying to take a shortcut. Oh, they must have the answers. They must have it all figured out, right? We do it in business too, right? Oh, look at this person. They've done so well, and now they want to run a masterclass or teach me something and ask me for money to pay for it, and I'm going to because they must have all the answers. Well, what if all you do is get one nugget out of that masterclass or that coaching or that teaching, right? Maybe that's what's worth it for you. Maybe you need to take that one nugget and apply it in a way that's true for you. Maybe you want to take a nugget out of their teaching and a nugget out of somebody else's teaching and combine it in a way that's unique for you. And notice I said the word apply, right? Whatever we learn, this is something that I see so much in all of our communities, is that we're all learning, we're all on the path, right? But none of us are applying it. We need to apply what we've learned. It is a practice. Everything we learn is a practice. And are we going to fall and stumble? Yes, we are. And are we going to come up against things that we've learned that we question? Yes, we are. And yes, we should, right? Because if you have to hang your beliefs on the ideology of somebody else, is that your belief? Is that truly yours? So, where I'm coming to right now is an acknowledgement that we all have clay feet, right? That none of these leaders have it figured out. They're just sharing their stuff with the world. None of them have it figured out. They may think they do. You may think they do. Their figuring out may not be what your figuring out needs to be. It may not even work for you, their path, right? I've seen people, it's out of vogue now to follow certain people, right? Maybe because they've made some bad choices, maybe because as we learn more about hierarchies and how the hierarchical narratives shift belief systems, maybe as we growing, we're starting to see the cracks in their methodology or in their teachings. That's okay. That's called progress. That's called progress. Doesn't mean that we should throw everything that they've done or taught out. Not necessarily. Why can't we take the piece that is still true and valid and build on that? So what I'm saying really is Do we really need these leaders? Do we need to be following people all the time, right? Are we asking too much of them to hold our beliefs and ideologies too? Are we asking too much of them to show us the way rather than saying, here's the way I took? It may or may not be yours. What it comes down to for me is, have I done my work? What are my values? Am I clear on my values? 100%? Have I challenged them? Do I know if that value is mine, or is that a value that is being espoused in a community that I want to belong to? Big critical issue here. We have a need. It is a primal need to belong. We want to belong. We want to be accepted. And sometimes we're going to buy wholesale into the belief system or the ideology of a community that is somewhat aligned with us because we so want to belong. And then when things start to diverge, we're faced with this. Do I keep following them and getting approval, social approval from my peers or from them? Or do I say that doesn't sit right with me anymore? That's not where I want to be. That's not aligned with what I'm learning. And do we risk the disapproval, the shaming, the judgment to forge our own path? That's that's a hard call. I mean, that's a hard call for people. That's rough to have to choose between belonging and integrity. So I think there has to be a way. And I think part of it, I think Brene Brown talks about belonging to yourself first. If we're trying to belong to everybody else, we're always going to chase them and their ideologies and their beliefs. And we're never going to quite feel like we belong. But to belong to ourselves first takes getting really clear on what our values are, what is important to us. Do we value fact over opinion? Remember, as a species on this planet, we're going through some unprecedented stuff that is exacerbating and sometimes causing trauma responses that create very black and white thinking, very absolutist thinking. Nothing in the world, I believe, nothing is absolute. Everything is a shade of gray. Everything is a both and. My challenge is, how are you going to embrace that? How are you going to hold paradox? How are you going to say, what are my core values? And then what are the values that I hold in common with my community? I believe that every one of you is working for a better world. Every one of you. I believe that your path may be helpful for you and it may be helpful for some other people. It may actually be harmful for somebody else. And I believe that by trying to make everything black and white, we're increasing the risk of harm. We all want to be loved. We all want to belong. We all want to be accepted. We all have wounds that need healing. And it's uncomfortable. And we're tired. And we have so much grief right now. And remember, anger is at the root of it's a masquerade, I think, right? Underneath anger, I believe, are a sense of injustice. Something's not right in the world, right? My path to resolving that anger is, how can I promote justice? How can I find a more equitable path? How can I help? Another thing that anger masquerades in front of is grief. And my path there is, how do I acknowledge and hold the space for that grief? How do I feel it and allow it to be processed? How do I honor it? Because in my word, grief is another word for love. And then control, feeling out of control. Can sometimes we feel angry because we feel helpless. And I want to say that feeling helpless is valid. The truth is, we're never entirely helpless. We always have the ability to choose our response. So, my question to you and my challenge to you, continue to appreciate these leaders for putting themselves out there in the world. And demote them. My challenge to you, demote all the leaders in your world, in your movement. Don't look at them as icons or gods or people to emulate. Look at them and appreciate their contributions and acknowledge that they are human beings. They're human beings. That nobody has attained enlightenment in our human condition. And after you've demoted all these leaders and acknowledged that they're peers as much as anything else, I want you to look within and find your inner leader. What's true for you? What values do you want to align your life with? Kindness for me, kindness and compassion, justice and equity, right? For somebody else, it may be joy. It may be order. It may be stability. It could be anything. I want you to look inside. What drives you? What truly, truly drives you? And then, how am I living in alignment with that? What is my practice? Can I hold that value in front of me? Right? If I think of what may be the core of all of my values, can I hold that in front of me and challenge myself every single day? Am I being kind for me? Am I being kind? Am I being compassionate? Am I standing for justice and equity? And I can guarantee you there are times that I am not kind or compassionate, and that I am a poor standard for justice and equity. And again, if kindness and compassion are my core values, how can I come back to that? Which includes, how can I work on not judging myself and not judging other people? And sometimes it's just, can I just be aware right now? Can I be aware of where I am and where my values are, and how big or small that gap is? I can guarantee you the size of that gap is fully aligned with the amount of angst you're feeling. So how can I close it? How can I close it? What do I need to do today? What do I need to do in this moment? You don't need a guru. You don't need somebody in your movement or in your community telling you that. You don't need them judging you for your gap. You don't need that. You be the leader of your own life. It's uncomfortable AF. I can tell you that. But it is so much more peaceful. I acknowledge the contributions of everybody in all of these movements. And I also acknowledge that none of them have the absolute truth. None of them, not one. I don't believe it. I believe that there are threads of truth and that it's my job to find those threads and weave them into a rope that I can use to pull myself up a mountain, right? Or a blanket that I can use to comfort myself or someone else. Sit with this for a little bit. How can we come back to our values? How can we find the values that we share and use that to build rather than to tear down, to learn and grow rather than judge and divide? I work with students of a coaching program, and I'm one of the things that we work on for 2 years is values. I think it's absolutely foundational, and they struggle with it. They struggle and struggle. What are my values? What are the belief systems that I've swallowed whole versus what's really true in my heart and in what's aligned with my values? Where are there values that clash, right? And how do I hold that polarity, right? Where is a value of mine clashing with a need? Because by the way, need will always trump value, right? This is why, for example, we need to make sure that people's basic human needs are met, because they're not going to go up into the esoteric when they're sitting in survival mode, trying to figure out where their next meal is or how to pay the rent or any of this stuff, right? How not to get shot, those sorts of things, right? You can't be saying to people, oh, love and light and evolve and you know, be this paragon of virtue when they're struggling to keep their human body on the planet. And also, if you're in that space, what choices do you have? The one question I'll ask always: what choices do I have in this situation? What choices do I have? Because I always have a choice. It may not be a fun choice, it may be a really hard choice, it may be a choice that I don't want to make. But I always have one. I have something that I can choose, even if it's just what's my mindset right now, right? I'm cold, I'm hungry, I'm starving. And can I choose to be, to not give into that, to not be to not be overrun by it. What can I do? Can I go and stand on a street corner? Right? Can I ask for help? Sometimes those choices may not be choices that society agrees with, but you're choosing to survive. You're choosing to find a way. Sometimes that may not be the healthiest way, but you're adapting, you're surviving. And I take my hat off to you for that. And when you have the luxury of more esoteric choice, please remember that not all of us do. There are so many of us out there who could do with a little kindness and compassion from the rest of us. So I'll leave you with that. I'll leave you with that. What are your core human values? What values do you hold with other people? What are you here for on the planet? Are you here to make positive change? If you are, stop hanging your hat on somebody else's hat stand. It's a terrible metaphor. It doesn't really even make sense. Stop tying your beliefs and ideologies to those of other people. Do your work. Do your work. And you're not alone. You're not alone. If you need help with it, find a good coactive coach, somebody who's not going to tell you what your answers are, who's not going to tell you what your reality should be. You're the expert in that. Find a coach, a coactive coach, who is going to maybe say, hey, I've noticed this, or I'm seeing this, or I'm aware of this. What are you taking out of it? Somebody who may shine a light on something that's out of your awareness, but not tell you what you should do about it, but rather sit in that struggle with you as you work it out. That is compassion, to struggle with. You don't need a guru. You don't need to look up to a leader in your movement or in your community. You are the leader you're looking for. You are the leader you have been looking for. So go lead. And with that, I hope that you are having a safe and healthy day or evening wherever you are in the world. And I'd love to hear your comments. I mean, I would really enjoy hearing back from you what you got out of today's episode and what you learned from it. And with that, I'll see you on the flip side.